In this class we're going to paint the illustration that has been prepared and protected in the previous class. So let me start with a nice big brush. Remember, you always paint in watercolors from the back to the front, and you always want to use the largest brush you can for the area. So let's just start here with a sky. I'm going to paint the sky right over the tree back, and most of this up here is foliage, so I'm not going to be too fussy about where the water goes, but I do want to protect this house by water masking around it. For those of you who might not know, water masking is just painting with water before you put the paint down, knowing that the paint is going to follow the water and so stay out of areas that are dry. Then I'll do a nice friendly cerulean. Notice that when I get to fussy parts like the house, I use the brush on the side and I slow down the pace to make a nice, careful, exacting edge. If there are some places that I think the sky would show through, around these branches for instance, I'll paint them a little bit more carefully. Alright, now while that's drying, I'm going to shift focus down to the street. Then I'll just put it down. Now as it retreats in the distance, the color is lighter, so I'm going to use some additional water and kind of lighten that up. And then back here it's darker. And I'll shift the paper so I can get that curve more fluid and natural. Now if I want to add some asphalt texture, I can do that really easily while the paint's still wet, but not too wet, by just spritzing some water on it. And that will make a little gravelly effect. And do just one gentle spritz, then you can see those textures coming out for me. Then this is dead grass and this is dead grass over here. So I can also go in with a large brush and make some of that dead grass color. It is supposed to be dead grass because this is an autumn book. So also you have to keep things like that in mind when you're illustrating. Where is the book taking place? What season are they in? Who is your audience? What mood are you trying to convey in the story? And so on and so forth. And in the foreground, once again, I'm going to spritz a spray of water so that I'll have some texture. And then I might just scrape through a grass blade or two here in the foreground, which will help the whole area to read as grass. There's one last area I can paint, and that is the grass on this side of the road. And here I'm going to spray the edges so that they don't dry too harsh. And I'll add some green up in this area. Spritz and spritz. But be careful about adding details too far back. If you add details where you shouldn't be able to see them, you're going to break down the realism of your piece. But now I'm at a place where I need to stop because there's nothing else that can be painted without causing bleeds, just like I did here a little bit. But now I can't paint the sidewalk without bleeding into the grass, I can't paint the trees without bleeding into the sky, and so I need to give this about 20 minutes for it to get completely dry, and then I'll come back to it and we'll push forward. Now the first layer is done, so we're going to push on with the next layer, and that's going to be trees and sidewalk. So I'll start on the sidewalk first, and I want the sidewalk to stand apart from the street, so it needs to be lighter. And then I can just paint right over the top of the boy again. So I'll wait for this base coat to dry and then I'll add the shadows around the wheels. And again, I'm going to make the foreground a little bit darker. And then I'll add this little sidewalk edge to the side of the road here. Here I can paint this far sidewalk. Very nice. And now let me do some work in those trees. I'm going to use a water bottle and just sprinkle on some texture and water to make a more realistic foliage pattern. And then I'll just kind of touch in here and there with the brush and let the watercolor paint itself. Use plenty of paint and use lots of different colors. And I can throw some straight yellows and blues in there and let them mix on the page. This tree in the background is much darker. Putting in a bush. Then I'll rinse out my brush and come over here and do some on this tree up here. Very nice. And I'm going to give it a light side and a dark side. Here's another tree. Alright, that's a good place to stop for number 2. I'll add one more tree back here, I guess. And a bush. There's a bush. Okay. Now that's a good place to stop for number 2. Okay, this first pass of trees is dry, so I'm going to add some branches and tree trunks. In some places you'll go over the leaves and others you'll avoid the leaves. And that will make it look like a real tree with these branches going in and out. And I'll do the same kind of thing in these other trees, especially this one that was mostly dead. And see how you can use the same brush to make all kinds of different brush strokes. Then maybe I will let this dry and sprinkle some leaves over the top of it after it's dry. But for now, let me do some other things. I'm going to add a little bit of a sidewalk line here. And with that same color, I'll add the shadows to the underside of the wagon. Maybe I'll add a little bit of a shadow around his feet. Then there's this garden plot here. So this is actually dirt. Let me do some work on the house here so you can see something different. Protect this window. Then I'll let this masking fluid dry and then I'll do the painting. I'll do a little bit more work in these bushes in the foreground. These little bushes right in here. And then this is a little apple tree or something with blossoms on it. So I'll mix up a pink and stipple in some of those little blossoms. I've added a few more background details here. It's not quite done, of course, but I wanted to show you how to lay in some of the other details like the house. So here we go with that house. It's looking a little bit like a barn, which I don't want, so I'm going to brown it down a little bit. And then I'll wait for this side to dry and brown that down as well. And then there's a big shadow that's being cast by the tree that goes across the lawn, the sidewalk, and this other lawn in the street. So we're going to put that on next while the masking fluid is still in place. Then I'm carefully, not too carefully, but somewhat carefully tracing the outside shape first. And then before that outline has a chance to dry, I'll go back and fill in. I'll make doubly sure that you get everything done around the figure, because once you take that masking fluid off, it's going to be a lot harder to make any adjustments to the figure. Alright, that's good for the shadow. So now let's go on and do some details in the house a little bit more. A slightly smaller flat, and do some work up here in this silo shaped thing. And I'll just take that color across to the shadow side for now, and when it dries I'll darken it. Here's the roof of the bigger house. This is where the text is going, so I don't want it to get too dark. And then take a little bit of time and go into the bush so it looks like the house is behind the bush. I'll do that some more off camera too, because that's the kind of fiddly thing that you really need to do to polish it up, but it takes a long time and it's boring to watch. Here's the background all finished, so I'm going to push forward to the figure in the wagon now. Let me pan in there. Now the things you have to be careful of are the edges. Inevitably, when you take off masking fluid or frisket film, you have a couple little problems where some paint slipped through. So I usually just get a craft brush, damp, and do my best to clean those spots up before I start painting. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint the base tone of the colors. I'll start with a little flesh tone for the back of his neck. And if you need to, you should redraw your lines before you start painting so they're really clear. Then I'll let that dry and paint the base tone on his jeans. Good. Then I'm going to choose a color for his shirt. And right now this does blend in with the grass, so I might need to push that color a little bit more to one side or another. Make it more yellow or more brown. Then I can give him some hair. Always look for the shapes of the shadows while you paint, and color shapes as well, and put them down as shapes. And then while this is still wet, I can touch him with a darker color. Then we'll give him some shoes. Then I will start work on the wagon and come back when this is a little bit more dry and add the wrinkles. So here's the back of my wagon. And you see how you just fill in. I fill in blocks of color in large sections first, and then I wait for that to dry and go back and do my detail work. So let me do a little bit of the wrinkles in the pants now. I don't want to make it too much, but I want to add a hint of realism. So just a few little things here and there. And in illustrations, it's a real tendency to overdo things. So you need to constantly pull yourself back and make sure that you're just giving an indication, not too much detail that winds up taking away from the overall meaning of the picture. So here's some basic wrinkles, and I might do just that much. So let me do that sort of work off camera of just doing this final detail work, and then I'll come back one last time and show you the finished piece. Now here is the finished illustration, and it's going to read quickly across 2 pages with plenty of room for text. It tells an obvious story at a glance, and the composition is good, with this line leading you into the painting and plenty of interest on this side as well to bring you all around. So it does everything that an illustration should do, and those are the elements that you should look for in your own illustrations as well. Now even if you're not illustrating and you're only interested in doing fine art, remember the same principles apply. You put down your shadow shapes in blocks, you put down the base tones first, and then you go back and you add those details last of all. Make sure that you know exactly how the whole thing is going to work together first, and then go back and do that polishing up work. So that concludes this month's painting tutorial. I hope you've learned some worthwhile things that you can take back to your own studio, and I wish you the best of luck in your own painting and drawing endeavors. Thanks so much for watching.